Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, we're taking a look at all of the card games that I have played, what I like, what I don't like, and everything in between. I have played a fair amount of card games in my lifespan, and I just figured, hey, I'm going to give you some thoughts, what I've enjoyed, what I don't, about specific card games, and why specific ones resonate more with me. And we're just going to rank them based off of just generally how I feel about the card games and the mechanics and stuff like that. Oh, I clicked the wrong button. Sorry. Anyway, we're going to go in alphabetical order, so not really in any particular order. Starting off here with Dragon Ball Fusion World, which is an online card game only. And yeah, this is... Oh, sorry. I must preface this by saying some of these I have played a significantly lower amount of games. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. I'll tell you generally how much I've played of a game as I discuss it, or at least how much experience I have with the game. Because some of them, like, I've watched a lot more content on than I've necessarily played, and vice versa. So, anyway, Dragon Ball, I have played a very small amount of, because I don't like this game. There's a lot of things that I don't like about that I'm going to talk about in regards to this game that apply to other games. First of all, I really don't like the way that the mana system, the quote-unquote mana system, works. I think the idea of having any card be mana and you just place it face down during your mana phase, and then that can be used as anything, is just an inelegant solution to a basically non-existent problem. The thing is, Hearthstone already kind of did the, like, mana pip thing, where you just, like, every turn you get an extra mana, hip hip hooray. And everybody gets that mana. There's not really a whole lot of things. Like, you can speed up some of the mana, and sometimes you can, like, slow down the mana that, like, you or your opponent gets. But for the most part, you just, like, you just always have a set amount of mana every turn, right? And Dragon Ball, as well as some other games, I know Lorcana and One Piece do this as well. The way that that mana system works, I just am not a fan of, because you just take the guy that you have, it's any card, you just place it face down, and bada bing, bada boom, it's mana now. And first of all, that means that there's a lot of cards in your deck that basically just become nothing cards, which I don't like, because it's basically invalidating a bunch of cards, which is very silly. And it means that oftentimes... oh, sorry. Another thing with specifically Dragon Ball and One Piece, because of the fact that you're also locked into a specific color that is associated with your leader, you also don't have the ability to, like, branch out in terms of strategies. So it's very frustrating to actually play these games, at least, especially in deck building, because you're just so heavily restricted on what you even can play. Because it's like, cool, you want to play... Let's say you're playing Dragon Ball and you want to play black. Cool. You can only play black color cards. Your leader is black. Let's say you're playing Bardock. You can only play black cards. Because he's Bardock, he's black. Therefore, you only have those cards. And it's very frustrating. And it really just, like, hinders everything about the game. I really don't like the way that the game works. I also am not a fan of the, like, Evo system for your leader. Where, like, if your leader takes a certain amount of damage, I think it's pretty much like every single leader, where you just take a certain amount of damage and all of a sudden you, like, power up. It's very silly, it's very goofy. And on top of that, life systems, that's something I also have a lot of issues with. There's a lot of systems where you either gain or lose cards dependent on, like, life. And so, like, for example, if I attack your leader in Dragon Ball, you are going to lose life, but you're also going to gain a card. And so not only do you gain that card, it's a card taken from your deck. So at the start of the game, you just lose a whole bunch of your deck, and it just goes away for a while. So again, there's a lot of cards that you just don't get access to because of the way that the deck, or not the deck, the gameplay is designed. Your deck becomes, like, less important. And I really am not a fan of that. Pretty much everything about this game I just don't like. Just from mechanics, basically. I just think it's a poorly designed game. I think it's really, really bad. That's it. Speaking of which, another Bandai Namco game, which is Digimon. Whoa, Digimon. Digimon is incredible. Digimon might be one of the greatest games in all of card game history. we'll come back to that. I'm going to put it tentatively in A tier. Digimon does the mana system, I think, the most best, for lack of a better term. The memory system that Digimon specifically allows is really, really good. It's really smart. Because basically, instead of having a set amount of mana that you have, you can actually use as much mana as you want. However, as soon as the mana tips over to the opponent's side, or the memory, sorry, not mana, as soon as the memory tips over to the opponent's side, it's their turn. Your turn ends. It's now their turn. And I think not only does this work brilliantly for having everything happen in one phase, what a lot of card games will do is they will have draw phase, everything happens, combat, activate cards, play cards, summon cards, just like everything happens, and then end phase. And that's it, right? You just have those 3 phases. And like sometimes that works, and I think in Digimon's case it works brilliantly. It's so clean. There are issues that I have with the game in terms of like digivolving and stuff like that, but even like at the toppest tier of games, I really do have like some issues with overall. But even with that being said, Digimon is a phenomenal system. I really enjoy the way that the memory system in particular works. I also really like the digivolving, where it's like, oh, by digivolving, you get to draw cards. There's a lot of ways to like refill your hand. You just constantly have a ton of cards that you get to see, which is very fun. And on top of that, just due to the way that the games themselves work, oftentimes you don't have to like search your deck and shuffle it, which means that oftentimes you're just like drawing cards and putting them onto the bottom and stuff like that. And so for the most part, I do really enjoy just the core mechanics of Digimon and the way that it works. Pretty much everything from Digimon is either good to great, right? So just a very, very solid game. My biggest gripe with it is the fact that everything happens in one phase. I think there just should be more. I think games like Magic and like Yu-Gi-Oh, where they have these dedicated like combat phases specifically, I think matter a lot. Not having a dedicated combat phase, I think, is something that hinders other games. Next up, we have Elestrals. Elestrals is a content creator project, and it is honestly pretty good. Yeah, as far as like a project goes, I think it's really well done. I think it is a very interesting take on a bunch of different mechanics from a bunch of different games. It has the attack and defense mechanics of Yu-Gi-Oh, which I think is very cool. It has mana systems as well, similar to that of Magic, where it's like a bunch of different color systems. However, one thing I cannot forgive Elestrals is the terrible, no good, very bad mana system that they have. Because not only is it a mana system, it's colored, which means that it is a bunch of different types. And, more importantly, it's also tied to your life. Meaning, as the game goes on, if you take more damage, you also have less things to do, because you just run out of mana. And I think that is a horrible card design. I despise that as a mechanic. I think it is a very, very bad mechanic, because it means that if you are on the back foot and you are constantly taking damage, you will just get further and further behind because your mana just doesn't end up matching up. Which means that either you have to very, very succinctly commit to very specific strategies, like for example, one mana type, or you have to just know like what mana to give up, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But there's not really a whole bunch of redeeming factors. Other than that, like, it's just, it really is just that mana system. I think the game is really, really good at almost everything else. There are some things that it has, like, issues with, but, ooh, man, the way that spirits work, at the very least, it is another deck that you know, climb into, basically. But it also just so heavily incentivizes one mana cost cards. It very heavily incentivizes, like, cheating out guys by not paying mana costs and stuff like that. And like reattaching mana through other means and stuff of that nature. And yeah, I really don't like that. Your health is also tied to your mana. I think that's just so clunky, and it really does just kind of ruin everything, at least for me in regards to Elestrals. I think Elestrals does a bunch of other things right. That's the one thing that is its fatal flaw. speaking of mana, Hearthstone, everything has mana, let's be honest. Hearthstone is a game that is actually, okay, I'm gonna move Elestrals up a little. It's not that bad, but like, that mana system really holds it back. Hearthstone is a game that is actually pretty good. Except for the fact that I'm lying to you, and it's really bad. You wanted me to say that it was really good, right? Because this is the classic card game that everyone knows. Everyone knows Hearthstone, right? At least, like, in terms of the online sphere, right? Hearthstone is, like, the big game, right? It was the Blizzard IP that ended up, like, just booming, right? It was right around the time of World of Warcraft and all of that stuff. We all know Hearthstone, right? And the thing is, I do think that it works generally. The problem is the UI. This is actually a really weird tangent, but at least when it comes to online games where they are exclusively online, the UI does matter. It matters immensely. And Hearthstone is just so heavily outdated in almost every regard. Just everything about it is just old. And it's frustrating. That being said, I think there are a fair amount of really fun mechanics. I like the idea of having a specific thing that you can pay mana to do that your leader does. Like it's always available to you, right? Like summoning a ghoul for the undead, or like, you know, having fireball or something else of that nature, right? Just having that little thing that you can dump mana into, I think is very good. I like the little mana pip thing where it's just you gain mana every turn. I think it's fine. It works. It's not like the greatest of solutions, but it works, right? The important thing is, though, that Hearthstone has a bunch of issues with its UI, but the gameplay itself is fine. It's not exceptional, and there are issues that I have with it, like generating cards, but for the most part, it's fine. I'm going to put it in the C tier alongside Elestrals, but I do think it's just, like, not great. I think it's just, like, very outdated, and it really hasn't been able to keep up with a lot of the other newer games. Speaking of newer games, Lorcana, I think it's fine. I think there's a lot of things that are cool about it, like the like spells and monsters and stuff like that. I think there's a lot more nuance to the way that the game itself works due to the way that like ink works, which is similar to that of like Dragon Ball and such. That being said, I'm not a fan of that mana system so much that I can't really put it higher. I also have very little in terms of knowledge on Lorcana, so I'm putting it low because I don't really have enough experience with it, probably. That being said, I might actually like it if I played it more, but what I have played is just not very fun. I have a fair amount of experience with Hearthstones, and this is probably the one I have the most experience with. These two are a little more shaky. Moving on. Magic the Gathering. The OG. The classic. The one everyone knows about. Magic the Gathering does a lot of things really well, and the thing is, it has stuck around for quite some time, and it is kept up very, very elegantly. It is a game full of keywords and mana in the form of lands, and it has a 5-color mana system. However, because of the way that the mana system works, I think it works by far the best. First of all, you can use that mana for very specific colored cards. Like, for example, if your card requires red mana, you have to have red mana available to you. Like, for example, a mountain. However, if your card does not require specifically that color of mana, you could use any type of mana. So let's say you have a red and any other mana, you could tap a mountain and a forest to get that mana. It's very nice, it's very elegant, and it works. It works really, really well. On top of that, I think there's so many things that this game does that a lot of them hit really well. And because they've just cast such a wide net, they've been able to catch all of the things that are really fun. For example, Kicker, or Storm, or, okay, Storm is a bad example, but, you know, things like Haste and like, you know, Tap to do a thing. There's just a bunch of different, like, abilities and keywords and all of these various different things that the game gets to do because it's been around for so long, that also it has the ability to kind of keep the fun things and get rid of the non-fun things, right? So oftentimes you won't see things that are like, that are like flank, or like horsemanship or something like that, where it's just like, oh yeah, these things that like no one cares about, right? So For the most part, I think that Magic is just a very, very solid game, and I'm gonna put it in A tier. The problem that I have with Magic is that its mana system is not quite what it could be. I think I think Digimon does mana better overall, but I think there's one other game that does a like color-based system a little bit better, which we'll talk about later. But overall, I do think it's a really, really good game. Honestly, I want to put it in S tier. It's one of the ones that I've enjoyed the most, but I don't think it's quite up there. I've played it a ton as well. Watched a bunch of content on it. Very familiar with the game. One Piece. One Piece is another one I'm a little bit less familiar with, or a lot of it less familiar with. One Piece is something that I just don't know too much about. That being said, One Piece, great game. I'm lying to you. It has a similar mana system to that of Dragon Ball and that of Lorcana and a myriad of other things. And yeah, it also has a similar problem to that of a lot of games, which is that you're tied to one color and one guy. I don't know why Bandai Namco does this. I cannot get behind One Piece. Everything about One Piece is the, like, screaming embodiment of Dragon Ball. It's slightly different, and I do mean slightly different, because they're basically the exact same games. That being said, they're both terrible. They're both really bad, and a lot of it comes down to the way that the mana system works. Not all of it, but, like, the mana system is really bad. On top of that, you're tied to one specific color in a deck. It's very clunky, and it's very silly, and it's very lame. I just don't like it. Just don't like it. Just don't like it. It's gross. It's lame. I hate it. Also, the combat system is that of Vanguard, which I also really am not a fan of. Because you're basically just attacking one guy, and you're only realistically ever attacking one guy unless something else tells you have to attack a different thing, and it's very, very goofy, and I'm not a fan of it. You just, like, vomit out a whole bunch of cards from your hand to, like, prevent that combat from happening. Next up, we have Pokemon. Pokemon the TCG. This is not Pokemon Pocket, even though I have technically played Pokemon Pocket, but those two are very, very similar, so I'm basically going to lump them together, because a lot of the mechanics kind of tie together. Now, I was mentioning how a colored mana system, there is a colored mana system that works better than Magic the Gathering, and that is Pokemon. Pokemon does it better. The energy system for Pokemon, I think, is really elegant in its solution, because you do not require energy to do everything, you just need it for attacks, which is a really, really beautiful way of allowing you to still use your Pokemon and to use your cards without exclusively tying them to the mana system. And I think this is a really, really fun way to make a game playable. And just overall, I just really enjoy it. One of my biggest issues, though, with this game is the fact that you do not have anything to do on your opponent's turn. Unlike something like Magic the Gathering, or even like Elestrals, or Yu-Gi-Oh!, or a bunch of these other games, you don't actually have anything you get to do on the opponent's turn. Your opponent does the game, and then you do the game. And that's a lot of card games, to be fair. They are turn-based, so it does make sense. But that is one of the gripes that I have with Pokemon. On top of that, Pokemon has a Pokemon in the active spot, which is the only Pokemon that you can realistically attack, except for the fact that that's not the case. There's a ton of different ways to attack things outside of the main guy, right? You can attack benched Pokemon and stuff like that, which is very, very cool. I think that's a lot of, there's a lot of really cool mechanics behind that as well, like moving damage counters and stuff like that. Also, just the way that, like, damage is calculated in this game is very, very cool. I just really like Pokemon. It's S tier. It's an S tier game. It's good. It's really, really good. I think it is brilliantly executed. Next up, we have Legends of Runeterra. Legends of Runeterra is a older Riot Games card game, which is specifically online, and it is very good. It's very, very solid. It is... Okay, I'm just going to say this. It's one of the best card games ever. Hands down, no questions asked. And a lot of this comes from their solution to a lot of problems is that they actually look at the problem and go, is this actually a problem, or is there already a solution? For example, mana. Hey, guess what? What if we did mana the same way that Hearthstone did it? Because they solved the problem. Instead of trying to do things with, like, Lorcana or with Dragon Ball or what have you, where they're like, oh, we're gonna, like, lock you into things. No, they're just like, cool, do the thing. Here's your mana. Which is very nice. However, not only do they do that, everyone gets to play. you take an action, and then your opponent takes an action, and then you take an action, and then your opponent takes an action, and then you take an action, and then your opponent takes an action. It's awesome. So basically, you always have something to do. It's always both players' turns. However, only one person gets to do combat, and only one person gets priority on a turn. And that's the little token. Sometimes you can get a token back, like, for example, you can also have an attack token. There are some cards that allow you to like have an additional attack token. So as the token passes back to your opponent, you still have the ability to conduct combat. They still have priority, they still get to take the first action, but at the very least you have something to do. Which is very cool. And it provides a lot more interesting ways to engage with that combat. And I think it still works really, really well. And because if you have the token, you get to control how long a turn goes for, you can actually just like cut off a turn very quickly. If your opponent has a bunch of things to do and you just don't, you can just be like, no, turn's over. And it's very, very fun. Legend of Runeterra, I think, just works really, really well. One of the things that I love about Legends of Runeterra as well is something that I previously said I didn't like about Pokemon, which is that you actually do have interaction on the opponent's turn. Spells actually exist. You have slow spells, you have fast spells, and you have burst spells. And fast and burst spells can be activated on the opponent's something. Right? If your opponent does a thing, cool, I get to respond with a fast spell, and then they can respond with another fast spell, and I can respond with a burst spell. It's very fun, and it's very engaging, and it allows you to actually do things that, Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Elestrals also has, which is very, very nice, and I think it's very solid. I love it. Phenomenal game, genuinely well done, and it just does so much right. Moving on to Riftbound. Riftbound I have seen so little of, but I have seen enough of it to give you an opinion on it, and I think it's fine. It's more of like a party game to me. I would never really fully invest into this game. It doesn't feel like there's enough for me specifically, and I'm not really a fan of the different zones and the way that like zones work. I think that's just very like not fun. But again, this feels more of like a party game as opposed to a TCG, so I wouldn't really invest too much into it myself, but I do think it's a fairly decent game. I like the way that the point system is scored. I like the mechanics of the individual champions and the like quote-unquote colors that are tied to them. So I do think that overall there's like a little bit more nuance to that, but it's just kind of a barely a step up from that of like One Piece and Dragon Ball and stuff like that. So there's that. I'm still gonna put it in C tier. Next up, we have Shadowverse, and I actually have two Shadowverses on here, because we have the original Shadowverse, and we have Shadowverse Worlds Beyond, which are two very different games. Even though they may seem the same, they are vastly different. Let's talk about Shadowverse. Shadowverse, I have not played enough of. That being said, it's far better than that of Worlds Beyond. And Worlds Beyond is fine. It works. I have some major issues with Worlds Beyond. It feels very unplayable if you do not have the highest rarity cards. That being said, I think there's a lot of mechanics that I do really enjoy. I like Evo. I think it's a very, very cool mechanic, just like evolving your cards. Not like Pokemon evolution, but like your card, just any of them can just evolve and become stronger and have Rush, which is pretty cool. It's similar to Haste, except for you can't attack face, you can just attack other creatures, which is pretty cool. I like the fact that you can actually attack creatures as well, and actively choose to engage with them, as opposed to Magic, which your opponent is the one who gets to choose whether or not they are blocking. You just always attack the face, which I think is a bit clunky. It's one of the things I like about some of the other combat systems. The problem that I have with Shadowverse Worlds Beyond as opposed to regular Shadowverse is entirely tied to the new mechanic that Worlds Beyond gave us, which was Super Evo, which is just a terrible mechanic. I just think it's very, very poorly designed. Because of the fact that Super Evo cards are just higher powered cards, for the most part what it ends up being is that because of Evos working the way that they do, you basically just wait for a Super Evo, and then it's just whoever has the stronger Super Evo available to them. And it's very, very clunky, and I'm not really that big of a fan of it. Also, because of the way that combat works with Super Evo cards, you just auto lose any combat with a Super Evo follower, which is not my cup of tea. I really don't like it. That being said, I do actually enjoy some of the other mechanics with that, and I do think that there are a lot of things to enjoy about the Shadowverse game itself. So there's that. It also does the like mana system that just pips up, similar to that of Hearthstone. So overall, there's that. Next up, we have Cardfight Vanguard, which I'm also going to put into B tier. Cardfight Vanguard, I think, is really well done, and most of that is due to the fact that, okay, I don't think it's really well done. It's pretty average, but it actually does have some really bad mechanics that I really am not a fan of, but it also has some really good mechanics. First and foremost, I like the way that combat is centered around the Vanguard. It's called Cardfight Vanguard, and your Vanguard is the most important card, and the way that you like evolve your Vanguard, I think, is pretty cool. Right, so for the most part, I do enjoy the Vanguard mechanics there. And the way that they, like, evolve as the game goes on. I think that's pretty fun. I also like the, for lack of a better term, like, the, like, combat. I don't know. Don't worry about it too much. But I do like the combat. I think it's pretty good. What I don't like is the life system being tied to cards in your deck. Yes, Pokemon also does this. However, I think Pokemon's solution to prize cards, I think, is just a little bit better than pretty much every other game. Even like Digimon, I think, is just frustrating in that regard. And yeah, I don't know. It's just not my favorite. I also really don't like the reveal from the top of the deck in order to gain bonuses. That's like something that has always bothered me. But other than that, pretty much everything else I've really enjoyed about the game. I think it works pretty well. Just there's that. Haven't had too much experience with this game, or not like a ton of experience, but you know, I've played a fair amount of it, and I've seen a fair amount of it. And then Yu-Gi-Oh! This should be pretty clear and self-explanatory. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the best game. I don't really have much else to say, except for that, of course, it's the best game. You've been listening to Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links music this entire time, and simply put, the reason I like Yu-Gi-Oh! Is because it's not like any other card game. There's nothing else to compare it to. That's one of the things that makes Pokemon as unique as it is as well. Pokemon has similar card design, facets to that of like Vanguard or these guys down here. But for the most part, Yu-Gi-Oh! Doesn't really have a similar game. You could argue Elestrals has similar mechanics, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Is holistically unique, and that is one of the things that makes it so brilliant. On top of that, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is really fun because of its absurdity. It's similar in nature to playing a fighting game, as opposed to a card game, and because of that, Yu-Gi-Oh! Kind of takes the cake. It's just an entirely different experience, and it works really, really well because of that unique experience. It has so many fast-paced, advanced mechanics that you get to really dive deep into and understand the complexity in. And not only that, it provides really, really unique deck-building challenges and restrictions, because technically speaking, there are none. You could put whatever 40 cards in your deck that you want. There's literally zero restriction. Similar to that of Magic, similar to that of Pokemon, similar to that of any game, technically. But the difference is, unlike a lot of these other things, you don't actually have any mana system to associate with them. So literally speaking, you could just put anything with anything. Which is one of the most brilliant things about this game, is that you can put like 7 different types of cards together. You want to play Ryzeal, Malice, Mitsurugi? You can do that. You want to play Yummy and Fiendsmith? You can do that. You can put a myriad of different decks together and different strategies and ideas and all of these different things, and you get to come up with that strategy yourself, which makes deck building by far the most interesting in Yu-Gi-Oh! On top of that, it has like 10,000 cards to look at, because every format is just, you get everything, which is very cool. So for the most part, I do think that Yu-Gi-Oh! Just does everything that a card game should. Like, it's the most interesting in terms of deck building, it's the most interesting in terms of gameplay, it removes the most amount of luck from a game, right? And you may be like, actually, your opening hand matters a lot more in Yu-Gi-Oh! And that is technically true, but the difference is, your opening hand matters a lot more, but the rest of your draws don't matter nearly as much. Because oftentimes your deck is just consistent enough to just kind of win, and you don't have to, like, top deck or anything like that, like you would in Magic, or in Shadowverse, or in Hearthstone, or in Dragon Ball, or in Pokemon, or in... the list goes on. right? So, yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't really have anything else to say. This is my tier list. If you guys disagree, or if you guys think that one game here was underrepresented, or you want to just tell me how terrible my tier list is, let me know down below in the comments. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you guys did indeed enjoy. If you did, a like is very much so appreciated. And remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye.